Hello there. So today I want to talk with you about the unconscious mind. It's one of my favorite topics. Love talking about the unconscious mind, mainly because it's so easy to gain a competitive advantage by just understanding how the unconscious mind works. So I thought I might let you in on a few interviewing secrets. Really, the unconscious mind is, human behavior is, and just like hiring behavior is a human behavior, it's ruled by the unconscious mind. So if you know how to, gosh, I hate to use the word manipulate, but if you know how to change the unconscious mind's behavior without them knowing it, then you actually, it's so easy to gain a competitive advantage in interviewing or really in any conversations. So this information today is going to be very applicable to not only phone interviewing, video interviewing, face-to-face interviewing, really any kind of interview situation, but also anything having to do with influence and persuasion, where you want the other person to do what you would like them to do and make them think it's their idea in the first place. Now, of course, with a great amount of power comes a great amount of responsibility. We are not talking black hat tricks here. We are talking using it for good and not for evil. So I'm going to go over just a few principles about the unconscious mind, and also something called neurolinguistic programming, which is NLP, an offshoot of hypnosis, that you can use specific language to get your way. All right. So if we go back to the premise of hiring behavior is just like any other human behavior, it is ruled by the unconscious mind. Now, recently a study came out that said that we as humans make our decisions 7 seconds prior to knowing about it in our unconscious mind. In other words, we make decisions unconsciously 7 seconds before we make them consciously, and it's always the same decision. What does that tell us? That tells us that most likely almost all of our decision making is completely unconscious. Now, that's scary for us because that means that we're not in control of our faculties, but that actually is a good thing because it means that there are some very easy techniques that you can use in order to get your way in an interview and make the interviewer think that it's their idea, but also you get to be the one in control. In other words, when I was, before I came into the career field, I was an unemployed executive for 12 months. I know what it was like to feel out of control, to be at the mercy of 23-year-old HR assistants that didn't know what I did for a living. I'm totally there, know what you're going through. So if there's some things that I can give you to help put more control back into your hands as the job seeker, that's what I'm hoping to do, because that's the whole reason why I started my business back in 2008. So if we go back to our unconscious mind rules all of our behavior, including hiring behavior. So if we can influence the unconscious mind, we can influence a decision maker's actions without them being aware of it. It's kind of scary, isn't it? So we do so by creating a strong bond with the other person's unconscious mind. And you do that through a variety of languaging and also body movements, nonverbal communication. That's how the unconscious mind reads things, is by the specific words that we use, as well as how we say it. In other words, our intonation, our inflection in the voice, and also 70% of it is body movements, how we move our body. If you've ever watched Cesar Millan with, he's the dog whisperer, he talks about how dogs communicate through energy. They just have a certain energy about them, and either it's tense or it's relaxed or it's sleepy, like my dogs. It's just it is different, but it's all energetic. Well, I think that a certain amount of our communication is energetic as well. You come in with an incredible amount of positive energy, and you're absolutely going to win the hearts and minds of anybody that you talk to. Of course, you all know those Debbie Downers that when they walk into a room, everybody freezes. The tension is so palpable, you can feel it, right? So I want you to consider energy as part of what you're doing in an interview, even if it's in a video interview. In fact, I just did a video on the body movements that you can do in a video interview and how important those are. So if you haven't checked out that video, I would recommend you can look it up on YouTube. You could also find it on our blog on the CRC website, which is careerresumeconsulting.com. So when we create a strong bond with the person's unconscious mind, as a job seeker, we are always looking to have as much control as possible into the job seeking process, the interviewing process. If I tell you a lot of little things to influence someone, to increase your influence, you're actually going to end up, if you give it a lot of these things and you add them up, you create a huge influence over the decision maker. So the more control you have in the process, it becomes your decision as to whether you want to take the job or not, which is kind of cool. That's what I wish for you, is that you have possibly even 2 jobs that you're looking at that you're interested in. So I want to give you some general neurolinguistic programming techniques, NLP, to use in interviews. And I'm just going to go through these very quickly, and then I will make individual quick videos to go through each one of these pieces so that you understand how to use the super secret ninja Jedi mind tricks in order to get your way and make the other person think it's their idea. So first of all, you have to, whether it be a video interview or a face-to-face interview, and these days everyone is doing video interviews, everyone. So get comfortable doing video interviews. In fact, it is so important to understand the importance of video and to do video well that we've made it a part of our branding program. I insisted that we put it in the branding program because everyone is doing video interviews and you have to get yourself ready for those video interviews. Okay, so awareness of body language of yourself and of others, as well as awareness of the intonation of yourself and of the interviewer or interviewers. A lot of times these days, people have to go through many more interviews than they've done in the past. It used to be that they would fly you in if it was out of state. They would fly you in, put you up in a hotel, and you would have an entire day of interviews, right, in person. They rarely do that anymore. In fact, I haven't seen one person have that done, with the exception of one gentleman who ended up getting the COO role in a small banking system in a small town. So he needed to be present, and they wanted to see him in person, and so they did, and they hired him. So think about the intonation that you use, as well as listening between the lines of the intonation that the interviewer uses as well. So you may have heard that 70% of your language that you get across, communication, is body language, and 23% is intonation and inflection in your voice. And then the final 7% are the actual words that you say. So we're basically talking about everything other than the words that you say. Because you could test yourself all day long on how to answer something, but it's not the words you say, it's how you make them feel. Honest to goodness, it's how you make them feel. So you want to build rapport from the very first moment you see them or hear them if you're on the phone. You want to build rapport by using either some specific commonality or some like something like specific as far as anything that you have in common, or anything that you had heard about them or like about their company, but it's got to be specific. It can't be general. It needs to be very specific. Also, the use of time-related grammar. And I know that sounds really weird, but let me explain what that means. So instead of saying, so will the person who takes this job have P&L responsibility? Instead, you would make it personal, and you would say, so if I were to take on this role in 3 or 4 weeks, would I have P&L responsibility? Now, when you do that, they picture you, their unconscious mind pictures you in their in that role, actually, and whether you would have P&L responsibility. Or if you ask, what's the first thing you'd have me do? You want to start that with, if I were to take on this role, what would be, in your opinion, what's the first thing that you'd have me do? So be thinking about that. That's called future pacing, and I did do a video on that already. So you can look up future pacing, and there's a video that I just made on future pacing in video interviews. Also understand modal verbs or modal operators. Now let me explain what that means very quickly. That's using things like would, should, could. I know that sounds really strange, however, it does work. If you say, well, what people could do, or what I have heard that you should do is, and then go into that. Those are words that authority figures use, and it's words that your parents used when you were a child. So when you go back to would, could, should, you're bringing them back to when they were a child and their parents said you should do this, you should not do this, kind of thing. Also communication models and also language predicates. So let me explain what that is. Language predicates are basically how you communicate. So you've probably heard that there are visual learners, there are auditory learners, there are kinesthetic learners. It's the same thing with communication. You don't have to be the same. You could be a visual learner, but an auditory communicator. So when you're talking, listen to how the other person says, oh, I totally hear what you're saying, or I can see that. I can see that. So are they using visual words like see, or are they using auditory words like hear? Or I think, are they using thinking or feeling? You want to take those words and parrot those back to them. In other words, you want to mimic those exactly and say exactly what it is that they said. So when you hear them say, oh, I totally hear what you're saying. Now, if they're kinesthetic, maybe it's, I can totally get that. I can get behind that. Definitely. Yeah, that's something I could totally get behind. They're moving. There's the kinesthetic in the communication. So think, just be aware of how they're talking, and when you pick up on whether they're visual, auditory, kinesthetic, just use exactly what they use, because people like people that communicate like them. And people hire people that they like over people that are more qualified. So A plus B equals C, A equals C, or something like that. A plus B, yeah. Well, A plus B equals C, C minus B equals A, or something. I remember algebra for some reason. Okay, so then there's also embedded commands. Embedded commands are, if I were to take on a project, what project would you want me to take on first? Or how can I make your job easier? I know that sounds like a suck up, but I've found that when I create ease and take away obstacles for the people that work around me, I create success for myself. So that's one of my principles, guiding principles of leadership, is to make sure that the obstacles are gone from people around me. Okay, also embedded questions. So when you ask a question, it hangs in their unconscious mind for a long time, actually. So you could embed a question. One might say that it's really a difficult thing for someone to actually go in and do this and this and this and whatever it might be. So just think, we'll go into embedded questions, but that is one of the things that I'm going to teach you. Also, body mirroring. That's super important. Body mirroring is when you're on a video call or a face-to-face meeting. When you're on a video call, let's say, in 2021, you're probably going to be on a video call, and as they lean forward, you lean forward. When they lean back, you lean back. And it doesn't have to be all that obvious. It's just really simple, leaning forward, leaning back. If they pick up a pen, pick up a pen. Or if they're looking at their mouse, you hold on to your mouse too. And what that does, again, their conscious mind doesn't pick up on it at all. You would think that they would, but they don't. No one does. And so when, for instance, they brush back their hair, you can do the same thing, but maybe you're just going to play with an earring, or maybe I don't even have an earring on, but showing your hand, it's actually a good thing. If you show the palm of your hand, it actually shows that you trust the person a lot. It's like an alligator showing its belly, or a person showing his hand, or the nape of the neck. You just, it's one of those trust things. So also, finally, awareness of emotional state and how to keep a hold of that state. So I'm going to teach you how to really drum up some very positive emotion when you go into an interview, and you're going to just throw that positive emotion all over the room, and then you'll be done, and then you can take a nap. But you're going to leave them with a huge impression. So we're going to talk about the things that you can do that will really increase your energy so that you go in with an incredible amount of positive energy, and how to research a company and an interviewer prior to the interview so that when you do go in with a large amount of energy and activity, that it's pointed at them specifically, and that they can join in on that because you're talking about something that they care about. So it's very important that when you do the research prior to the interviews, that you're looking up things that they would care about. For instance, if you go to Twitter and you see on the company's news feed 30 days ago that they're getting ready to break ground, well, that may not be in the Twitter sphere, may not be anything like a big deal 30 days ago, but for them, it is a super big deal, and they are breaking ground, and they are going to grow, and they are getting bigger, perhaps. Or maybe there's another reason that they broke ground. So you could ask them about that, but it's something that the interviewer will probably be very invested in emotionally, and that's what you want to do, is really get them emotionally invested in anything that you talk about. Okay, so I just went over some very general NLP techniques to use in interviews. I hope that that has served you a bit, but I'm going to take each of these and break them down into individual videos because I think it's actually worth it to do all of that. There's going to be a lot of really good stuff that you're going to learn from that. So that's it for me. I would love to hear in the comments below what you think of this information. It may have seemed like I rambled, but I did have an idea of what I wanted to say. And if you found that any of these were helpful, list them down below. I'd really like to know what it is that you'd like me to dig into first as far as one of the smaller topics. So let me know if you like this and if you want me to go into greater detail. All right. So this has been Tammy Kabell with Career Resume Consulting. And thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye now.